All right, everybody. Happy Wednesday, February 21st, 2024. We are glad you joined us. You are here tonight at Is It Time to Quit Tech? Discover Other Careers Worth a Look. We're having this conversation because it has been a tumultuous couple of years within the technology industry, marked by layoffs. We've had almost 40,000 of them this year in terms of employees being cut across a couple hundred companies. And over the last couple of years, we've had almost 300,000 tech workers cut, with Facebook and Google being among the biggest who are trimming their workforces due to everything from macroeconomic concerns to pivoting their businesses towards artificial intelligence. Tech, as you know, has been a volatile industry for quite some time, even before the pandemic. But it's especially interesting this time, given new technologies, given the state of the economy and high interest rates, and folks wondering when this type of volatility will end. The pandemic, as you know, brought a lot of increased hiring, and that increased hiring made people think that maybe good times would last forever, and clearly they have not. So, one thing we've been doing here at Albert's List over the last couple of years is exploring whether it's time to quit tech and maybe go into something a little bit more stable, something that may be a little bit more meaningful, and something that you can probably stay at for more than just a couple of years, which folks in tech often do not, either because they're jumping for increased salary or because they are getting laid off and having to move on to their next opportunity. So, to talk about this more, I wanted to explore a few careers that folks could get into that may be of interest to you tonight. And tonight we have a distinguished panel with us. Friends, of course, to me first, but also really cool individuals that I've met through Albert's List in my professional endeavors over the years, as well as through social media. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of who they are, and then they're going to make additional introductions of themselves. And then we're going to go through some questions and talk about these careers and explore whether they are, in fact, actually careers that you may be interested in switching into. For those of you who have questions, we will hopefully be trying to answer some of these questions throughout the course of the evening as time permits. And then we'll have an opportunity to have each of these individuals share their final thoughts and how you can connect with each and every one of them. So the first person we have tonight is Grania Callan. She is an employment lawyer. She's been in my Facebook group, Albert's Job Listings and Referrals, for quite a while now. And you'll find her commenting on posts that relate to anything that folks may face within their employment situation. As she's a lawyer, I give my disclaimer every single time that anything that she says does not constitute the creation of a formalized legal relationship with her. You must reach out to her and form that yourself if you want legal advice to apply to your specific situation. The second person I have is Cheryl Lee. She is a librarian in the Contra Costa Library System. She's We've spoken on each other's platforms over the last couple of years, and she has been my go-to person when it comes to learning about government work. And so she'll be talking about her area and what it's like to work in a library and what you might need to get there. Third is Logan Barron. Logan and I shared a cubicle wall at Oracle. And as I was saying earlier before I started recording, one day he decided that he was quitting tech and going into construction, which I thought was really interesting. And now that I've seen where the world has gone, it's become really, really cool. He now runs his own construction firm. Is going to be sharing what he's learned in terms of lessons, how he switched out. And if you're interested in construction or anything tangential to construction, like HVAC or plumbing work, how you could possibly go and do that as well. Last but not least is Rick Hall, whom I met on Facebook, I think in one of these Facebook threads many, many years ago. He and I have become friends. I try to bring him in for as many of these as possible because he is a teacher. He molds the minds of our future and helps children with also learning STEM technologies by getting into, I think, a robotics team. And he's here to talk about what it's like to work in the teaching sector. We've all heard about what teaching is like. And so he's going to shed light on the truth of it and also separate reality from hype. So, welcome to the four of you. Thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening. Let me know if, and yes, there will be a recording. This will be recorded. I'm going to hopefully follow up with y'all of you within the next 20 to 40, 24 to 48 hours or so. And I'll also include contact information for those who have joined. So, um, for those who are on the panel. So let's get started. I know I gave a brief introduction, but I guess we'll start. Grania, do you want to hop in deeper into what it is that you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Albert. I think it's great to have this panel that you do, and also how you provide a lot of resources to a lot of employees that are out there in the community. As Albert said, I am an employment lawyer. I do most of my cases, I represent the employee. I represent the workers who have been wronged. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there regarding what the law is and what the law isn't. And so what I do, especially with Albert's List people, is I will sit down. I will always, even though my practice is currently full right now, I will always take a moment to do a consult with an Albert's List member because I just want to give back to the community for everything that they do. So if you have any question about your employment, whether what you're being treated, what you can do, what your actions are, you certainly reach out to me and I'll be happy to help. And I will let you know also, being a lawyer is I think it's my seventh career. So I have a lot of experience. I jumped around a lot before. So I know where you can certainly make a switch and a pivot. And I see somebody asked in the chat, can I only advise on California cases? No, actually, I can advise on federal cases. I am licensed to practice law in California and federal court. But if you have like a New York specific case or Maryland, I think Rick, you were saying you were in Maryland or your wife was in Maryland and you're in Texas, like that. Those laws, you would need to go specific, but federal law kind of trumps a lot of state laws. So there is a distinction. So, but that's kind of me.
Awesome. Cheryl.
Hey, listers. So glad to be back here again. I am at Contra Costa County Library and I'm a library services manager. So think of me, like if you think of retail, think of me as like a district manager. I currently oversee 8 locations, south all the way to San Ramon, all the way up to Pleasant Hill. When you think of Contra Costa, you think of Walnut Creek. Those are the branches that I oversee currently right now. Have 143 staff underneath me, and I actually will be leaving Contra Costa in a week or so, and I will be back in the South Bay at Santa Clara County Library. My job is very, very administrative. I used to be out on the floor, out in the library, out on the desk. Not anymore. I'm back in usually when things go really bad, like a child goes missing and parents are upset and the police are calling and need something. That's usually me who's handling it, or staffing gets awry. There's only one staff at the library and I need to aggregate more staff. That's usually when I get called, or when the Board of Supervisors mention something about the library that they don't find that they like, or they get complaints. That's where my job kicks in. So more of the back end stuff. Previously, some of the A-listers might know, I was at Santa Clara City Library and Northside Branch Library, and as a branch manager over there. Happy to be here, Albert, and I'll take it back to you.
Awesome. Logan.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Yeah, Albert pretty much covered it, but I'll just reiterate. Yeah, so I graduated from USC. First job out of college was at Oracle. Worked in the sales department there and the marketing department. Marketing side's where I met Albert. I was an analyst there, data analyst for the marketing team. During COVID, I jumped to construction. I didn't really seek it out. I guess I was planning to be in tech for the rest of my life, and the owner of the company I ended up going to work for basically gave me an offer that I couldn't refuse. It was basically a quick track to ownership, which is why I ended up leaving. Um, didn't end up coming to fruition, so I started my own company not too long ago, and have been on that path. But I have a super, I guess, broad understanding of all things construction, small scale, large scale, what it's like to be in the trades, private work, union work, everything like that. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions if those opportunities arrive later today.
Awesome. Wonderful. And Rick.
All right, so I'm Rick Hall. I have a background as mainly field IT rep and then in IT sales. And my desire was actually to always teach. That was my second dream job. And unless the Minnesota Vikings call me and ask me to do their color analyst on the TV broadcast, this is my dream job. So when I was working, actually selling I was doing marketing for and the website for a local deck and patio company when the housing market crashed. And my wife convinced me, go back to school, get your degree to be a teacher. And 14 years later, I'm teaching computer science in a STEM program and running the #1 robotics team in the state of Maryland. So it's been a fun ride.
Awesome. Wonderful. So, all of you do really interesting careers, maybe things that folks didn't necessarily think of when they went into tech. I think that one of the things that I was saying to someone that I was talking to earlier today is, we go into school and we remember those career days where we met the policeman, or in Rick's case, the teacher, or something beyond that. And then we go into the real world and we discover, oh, there's construction, there's becoming a librarian, there's becoming an employment lawyer, which folks don't necessarily think of because they think of case lawyers like Matlock, right? That's dating me a little bit, but it is what it is. And so with looking at this, I think it's always interesting to know what folks do when when it comes to the day to day, right? For those of us in tech, it's answering emails, it's hanging out in a coding studio editor, it's um, going to conferences and standing at a booth, which I'll be doing in a couple of weeks. And so I'd love to hear from each of you what your day to day looks like. I know some of you sort of dived into it, but let's go a little bit deeper, and I'll start with Rick.
So I'd like to start out just by saying that this is something that anybody who has worked in the tech field could definitely do as long as you have the patience to work with kids. Obviously, an elementary school teacher is going to be different than a high school teacher, and it really kind of depends on where you are. If you're really crazy, middle school like I do is perfect for you. But I my daily routine is I start out my day with my students from my robotics group for an hour, and then I go through my classes. I created the curriculum that I teach, so I had a lot of freedom because there's just not a lot of material out there that's designed to really get you through an entire school year for a variety of grades. So I was very fortunate to come into a situation where I had kind of autonomy over what I wanted to do in the classroom, and it's been extremely rewarding. It's been a lot of fun. Um, Education has changed quite a bit, but I can tell you that there's a big difference between being a math teacher or a language arts teacher and being a computer science teacher. I had a student get called down to the office the other day, and it was for early dismissal, and the other kid's like, "Oh, you're so lucky," and he got up and he said, "No, this is my favorite class. I don't want to leave." And I'm like, "That's the benefit to being a computer science teacher. Like the kids actually want to come and learn what you're teaching, and they have fun, and it's I tell them all the time, if you just pay attention to my class, you're putting a foundation towards something that could really pay the bills in a very comfortable way in the future. And it doesn't take a lot of selling to get them to buy into the concepts of what we're doing in class. So it takes a lot of that stress that the average teacher deals with out of the job.
Love it. Yeah, no, having an engaged audience is always important. Logan, tell us about your day to day.
Yeah, my day to day changes all the time. So today I drove around to multiple job sites, checking up on my crews, and then multiple meetings with various customers. Once I got home, I did some reports for a mold project I'm working on. Um, Answered a bunch of emails, did a little bit of billing, so sending out invoices to customers, um, pretty much all over the map. So yeah, I mean, my day to day varies all the time. I'd say, mostly what I'm doing is doing a lot of estimates, which in the construction world, providing bids and quotes for, potential work. And then, yeah, just ordering materials, ordering parts, and just running projects.
Awesome. Cheryl.
I forgot to mention when I was doing my introduction, because a lot of people probably think I wanted to become a librarian, and it's probably pretty something I should mention is I never wanted to be a librarian. This was just a high school job for me. Like working at the library was a high school job just to get through college and just to pay the bills. And all of a sudden, I had amazing interaction with the library customer that really changed and propelled my life in a different direction. And who knew I was going to be a librarian and that was going to be my career? So my day to day, really, like everybody says, very different. However, there are some constants. When 8 o'clock rolls around, that's when my nightmares and headaches begin. I have to see who's called out, who, for COVID, for other reasons. And so my job is to create some equilibrium within our 26 locations and make sure that everything stays open. So I'm shuffling around staff, I'm making calls, trying to get that taken care of. And then during the day, I'm meeting with my managers one-on-ones. Sometimes I try to triage as much as I can. They bring me a lot of questions. They try to stump me a lot. And sometimes I'm a part-time therapist if things are going wrong, because sometimes things in their personal life or at work situation just isn't going the way they want it to. And so sometimes I have to wear multiple hats. Sometimes I'm your best friend. Sometimes I'm your worst enemy. Sometimes I'm just your boss. So wearing all those hats as well. And then unfortunately, my job is suspending customers or patrons. We like to think of the library as a quiet place where people like to just study and do their own thing, but sometimes things get out of hand. People like to do different things in the library, and X-rated things or inappropriate things that they shouldn't be doing. So a lot of my time is spent on writing suspensions, mailing out suspensions, and then calling customers who have issues with staff or with service, and a lot of HR stuff, hiring, which is the fun part, the not so fun part, counseling memos, reprimands, down and dirty FMLA stuff, you name it. I've dealt with it. So yeah, that's pretty much my day to day.
So you went from being a librarian to kind of an administrator, like where you're hiring and
Yeah,
firing
yeah.
now.
I
Wow.
mean, you think of a librarian, you think you just kind of like sit at a desk and, people come up to you, you answer questions, you tell people, shh, don't do anything, don't do this, don't do that. And yeah, I mean, some of my librarians do that. Some of the library staff do that. But yeah, I'm more in the back office dealing with the other things.
Yeah. Awesome. Grania.
Sorry, unmute. So my day to day varies as well. A lot of it is spent arguing with other people, with trying not to argue with the judges. And it depends on what I have going on. Like the last 2 to 3 days, I have had hearings to prepare for that I have to get my paperwork in beforehand with enough time. There's like deadlines that you have to get your motions in into the other side. And unfortunately, if you miss one, then you're like you're kind of screwed, as I didn't calculate properly the President's Day holiday, so I have to find a new date for one of my hearings. But if it's a mediation, it's a lot of fun, because then it's me with the other side. That what we're trying to do is figure out, do we have to go to litigation to resolve this or not? But it's a lot of, the mediator spends one time with you and your client, and here's where I let my client do a lot of the talking and get their chance to tell their story. Then the mediator goes into the other side, and then there's like an hour of downtime waiting for the mediator to come back and tell you why, like, your flaws in your position and the flaws in the other side. So anyway, there's that. There's also trials. Now, trials for me are a lot of fun. They're a lot of work, but they're a lot of fun, because I get to impeach people, I get to call them liars, and I had at my my last trial that I just did, it was really funny, because you're not allowed to record things in court. And I had just finished my closing argument, and the defense counsel got up to start his closing argument, and the defendant actually picked up his phone and he triggered something where he had recorded my closing argument. And the
Oh, my.
court, so as they're starting, I'm like, excuse me, why is my voice coming out of your phone? Where he's going, and he's like, that's not your voice. I'm like, no, I know my voice. Why did you record me? And he's like, again, he's saying it's not you. And then the judge got involved and said, no, we all heard it. Was that from today? And then the defendant was saying, no, not from today. And so then the judge ordered him up to the bench, and he took his phone with him, or had to take his phone with him, and he's trying to erase the recording as he's walking up to the judge's bench. And so then, Rick, at this point, the judge said, sheriff, take that phone into custody. The phone got taken into custody. And, I'm sure you want to say that to the teenagers that you're with all the time, like, no phones while going on. But anyway, so it was this whole thing of where my closing argument, I was like, the defendant's a liar, and he's an opportunist, and he will twist anything around. And I'm like, I could not have asked for a better demonstrative of, do not believe this person. So it's also, I do a lot of hand holding, trying to explain to my clients what's going on, but there is a lot of hurry up and wait. And unfortunately, with the pandemic, there's a lot, although the courts are now starting to get more caught up, but things, it's been a long process. So trying to explain to my clients what's going on, when we can expect a decision, or when we're going to trial, it varies. So there's always a lot going on with my day-to-day.
Nice. Yep. So as you can tell, I think everything that you do in tech that makes you busy will be similarly busy as you get into a different industry. So thank you all for those answers. The next question I had, since we're learning about, I think, the day in the life of what it is that you do, I think will be of interest to a lot of folks who have joined this particular call. I want to talk about compensation and total comp. As we know, tech is well known for very high salaries, sometimes astronomical, plus very interesting benefits that can include everything from catered lunch to fitness benefits to very fringe benefits that you may not ever consider and think about. So, if it's comfortable with all of you, I'd like to talk money because, of course, anything that's worth doing in life is worth doing if you get paid for it. And so we're going to start with Grania. Let's talk about money.
Of course. So I have my own firm. So my money varies based on, I do majority of my work is on contingency. So I would say I'm probably, so I don't actually pay myself a salary, but I cover all of my bills, like my credit card bills around 30,000 a month, and they're covered. So some of that is business expenses and other things like that. So I'm doing well, but I don't have a good, I know it's kind of horrible, I don't have a good, this is what you get for being this. I know there are a lot of, like, there's so many different types of lawyers that you can be. Like what I heard, the in-house counsel for Apple, her salary plus benefits is around $29 million a year. I know there are public defenders, they make like 40,000 a year. So there's quite a range in there. It just depends on what kind of law that you want to do. It also, you can be transactional, or you can be litigation. So transactional lawyers, that's going to be a lot of like family law, doing estate planning, that kind of thing, where you actually don't generally go into courts, and that you can have a fairly consistent, but it also depends on where you're living. So it's all over the map. But also, if you don't want to become an attorney, you can, there's so many different other fields that you can do in law. You can become a paralegal, you can be a legal assistant, and there's a lot of firms that will pay even up to 6 figures, from what I understand, if you're in demand with what it is that you do. And I know it can be quite challenging to find somebody really good to kind of step in and do that. But if you can take a lot of your tech skills, transfer it over into law, you should be able to find a decent salary depending on your interest.
And do you see shortages in the field of law, or do you think that it's pretty crowded and if it's too full?
No, it's not too full. I can tell you definitely in employment law, it's not too full. It's and especially if you're not down in Southern California, because Southern California, it's like the attorneys down there is like Squid Games, where everybody, it's like lethal what they do down here. Northern California, we're more collaborative, but there's if you're good at what you do, I think that you can definitely can make, like, I've never actually advertised my business. The most advertisement I've done has been through Albert's List, of answering a couple of questions. And I have more, I'm turning cases away a lot more now than, especially than when I did before. So I would think that, but I also think that there's the attitude a lot of people have, like, you're never going to find a job no matter what the field is. And then there's the people who are like, oh, I always find a job no matter what the field is. And I think if you can make yourself stand out, your attitude will help you get to where you want to be. And sure, if you want to be in like if you want to get the $29 million Apple in-house counsel job, that's probably a lot harder to get than I'm willing to be a public defender and kind of learn and move my way up. So there's always a need for more. I know people don't say this often enough. There's a need for more attorneys, especially like in immigration, you know, and for education, like all of these fields need that you're working in construction. There's need for some good attorneys with the way things are going. And it's helpful, just even if you go get a JD or you get the legal background, having that legal knowledge can certainly help you no matter what industry that you're in.
Love it. Cheryl.
Oh, I love this discussion about money. So as you know, when people lose their job, the first place they go to is the library, right? So I think I have a lot of experience in this. And here's what I hear a lot from tech workers. They're like, hey, Cheryl, love to work for government. Think it's cool. But how much do you get paid? And what's the salary? And then when I tell them, hey, it's this much, they go, oh, I can't do that. That's like way low than what I'm making now. And here's the thing I'm going to tell you guys, listen up here, okay? Even though you may make less, I'm going to tell you, I know people who make $200,000 a year in tech, and then they're out of a job 3 months later. So, I mean, when you think about it, do you want the big paycheck for the big return for only 3 months, or would you rather have a little bit of peace of mind and go to sleep at night and rest your head in your pillow, knowing that that check is coming, automatic deposit in your bank account? And that's the difference between the tech mentality and the government mentality. And I will never make tech money. Honestly, I won't. but I'll sleep at night knowing that I've got this paycheck coming in. And then when I'm 55 or when I decide to retire, I'm going to have a check coming in the mail each month, my pension, to make sure that I rest easy when I am in the sunset of my life. And so getting back to your question, I just really think sometimes with tech workers, I have to say it, you got to take the cut. Sometimes you got to take the cut, and then you know what you need to do with that money, with the cut? Go invest in some mutual funds, stocks, go invest in it, make your money work for you, and then make up that $20,000 or $30,000, and make it up in different ways, because I'm going to tell you that residual income that comes in, and then your compound interest and the dividends, is going to make up all that $20,000 that you were thinking about. Oh, I lost that. So sorry, a little bit controversial, but back to the librarian shtick and the front of librarianship. So in order to be librarian, most libraries require you to have a master's in library and information science. That is the bare minimum. So if you have a master's in engineering, you have a master's in, whatever, it, unfortunately, most of the time doesn't count. Now, you could be a library staff member with multiple degrees, PhDs, and stuff like that. And library staff members, on average, make around 50,000. Where, by the way, where I work currently, we're the lowest paid in the 9 Bay Area counties. Or you can make around 80K and be in Silicon Valley libraries. Librarians make around 85,000 to around 110,000, and that's not including the medical, dental, vision, your your deferred compensation and your pension as well. Then library managers like me make anywhere from $110,000 to around $180,000, depending on where you are, how big scope you have of your work. Then library directors and CEOs, depending on where you are. I've seen $185,000 to all the way up to $300,000. And that's just as a library director, CEO. Yes, I mean, depending on which system you work at, you can command that amount. But usually you're been a librarian for around 15, 20 years. You've put in your dues. You don't usually rise to the top unless very seldomly do you have non-degreed CEOs. There's been a couple, like one in Santa Cruz, but that's very rare. So yeah, that's
And I'm about to say 110 to 180 is tech money. I mean, right?
Yeah, and it's
110
not
is
including the pension, you guys, but there are sacrifices that have to be made. I don't know if you want me to talk about it now, Albert, but maybe I'll have you segue into it a little bit later. I mean, realistically and truly, Albert knows how many nights and weekends I worked. And
right.
I
Yeah.
work, I put in my dues. I was working 9:30 at night, doing seminars and helping out my staff. And, the library is open a lot of hours. So that's some of the
Yeah.
draw.
Back when I was speaking, you were doing post-event happy
I
hours
was
till
doing 3
9:30
nights a
p.m.
week, and then
So,
I was doing a Saturday or a Sunday. So I mean, you
wow.
pay your dues. And I still work Saturdays every once in a while. I still work every 5th Saturday. So you don't get away from
Mhm.
the traditional, working tech 9 to 5, or whatever you guys work Monday through Friday. So I mean, those are the trade-offs. And so you have to think about work-life balance. You got to think about whether you want to sleep at night. You got to think about whether you want paychecks coming in all the time, or whether you want the big paychecks immediately, and the free lunches,
Mhm.
the free dinners, and the nights out, and comped.
Can you talk a little bit about the pension as well, right? I think everybody who
Oh,
has worked in private sector, I mean, we know what a pension is. I think maybe we rub it in a little bit here. We all know about our 401ks and our IRAs and so forth, but the pension is another unique piece that we should highlight a little bit.
yeah, the pension is where, and Rick could probably talk about this as well, because I'm sure he probably has one too. You do take a cut in your regular salary. I mean, you're not going to
Mhm.
be making that much, but the pension is there, unless there's pension reform. And also, I hate to say it, for those of you guys who are thinking about going into government now, the cut of your pension is severely less than maybe what Rick and I have. We're probably grandfathered in, and we'll probably make 70 to 80% of our actual pay when we retire, which is unheard of. But currently right now, the pension reform, you're probably only going to see maybe 20 or 30% of your last paycheck for, your last 2 years of your career. So whatever you made, if you made 100 grand for the last 2 years of your career, then you'll only make around 20% of that paycheck, which will be around, if I do my math correctly, 20 grand over a series of 12 months. And that check comes in every month. And then you also get retiree medical as well, depending on how long you stay at an organization. Some government, you stay there for 20 years, you get your full medical, which is unheard of. So yeah, those are some of the kind of benefits of the pension. And so it just depends what you want.
Cool. Logan, I'd love to hear from you in regards to the construction field, and in particular, if somebody even wants to go and work as an individual contributor in the construction field, what that might look like.
Sure. So, typical beginning roles in construction, you have your typical roles like a bookkeeper, administrative assistant, receptionist, things like that, which I'd say are pretty standard across the board. Construction specific roles, so like a decent entry level roles, like an assistant project manager role. So it's kind of like an assistant, administrative assistant, but it's more on the project specific side. So you might be helping file for permits. You might, do some research on what subs, are in the area. If you need to find a tile sub, you'll research tile subs. You'll maybe call them, vet them a little bit, hand them off to the project manager, things like that. So that salary, starting off anywhere maybe from like 60 to 90K probably. For the assistant project manager role, you can work your way up to a project engineer, which is kind of one step above that, or sometimes you'll just go from assistant project manager to project manager. PMs make anywhere from probably 100 to 150K. A good thing about construction, I'd say average bonus is probably 15% of your salary. That's typically what's expected when you are working at a company that is profitable and doing well. That's at least for the project management side or superintendent side. Those people are typically extremely well versed in the technical side of construction. So I think maybe most people in here that aren't tradespeople, the project manager route is probably more for you. When you work on public works jobs, are extremely paperwork intensive. So the billing processes are extremely specific. The codes you have to require, the pay rates are very specific. When you're managing, let's say, a private home building job, it's kind of whatever your company sets forth. So most construction companies try to not do much paperwork. It'll mainly be managing the crews, managing the subcontractors, making sure the schedule is staying in line, materials are coming in on time. That's kind of what you could expect to do, on a project standpoint. Most people in construction are pretty keyed into the billing cycles, the accounting side, the profitability of the job. So it's good to see that people in construction kind of understand the financial side of it. Most of us here who have worked in tech potentially, we don't really deal with that, right? We do our marketing job, we do our sales job, we do our engineering job, and we don't really see what's going on in the other branches of the business. In construction, I'd say there's a lot of overlap and cross-functional collaboration, which is a pretty cool thing to see. And then on the trade side, I was really shocked at what compensation is like. So I'll start with welders on the high end. So good pipe welders, structural welders. So a rig welder is someone, it's a welder, they have their own truck. They are basically a freelance welder. Those guys make anywhere from, 125 to 180 an hour.
Wow.
Granted, that's providing their own materials, that's providing the cost of the truck. So that's not their take home. But I guess you could expect your wage to be 100 an hour and 25 hour for your expenses, your insurance, things like that. But granted, in the construction field, not everyone gets a 40-hour work week and you don't get paid by salary. So, I have a friend who's a rig welder. Does 125 an hour. He might go 2 weeks without any work. He might go a week with 40 hours of work or 60 hours of work, and then he makes a ton of money in that time period. So it's a little flexible, and same with the other roles. So sometimes you find a company, they can pretty much work you 40 to 60 hours a week. You get paid by the hour, you make good overtime. Sometimes you make double time, which is great. But sometimes you work for a company, they work you for 2 weeks and then they lay you off because their project's done. So, plumbers can make anywhere from 30 to 80 bucks an hour. Obviously starting on the lower end as you get more experience, or you're leading a crew, you're a foreman, you're a lead plumber, maybe you're leading multiple crews. Obviously the rates go up. Electricians, probably the same, maybe a little bit more on the higher end. Um, Carpenters, I don't know too much on the public work side, but on the private jobs, 40, 50 an hour. And that's also typically providing your own tools. Your tool breaks, you go buy your, a new drill, a new saw, whatever it is at the store. It's all on you. Some companies will provide that, but it just varies. Things are all over the map. If you were interested in getting into a trade, there's trade schools that teach plumbing, HVAC, electricians. There's welding schools. So I think the trades are, um, I guess in my generation, probably a little bit of a dying breed. I definitely think there could be a lot of opportunity there in the future, and the salaries are really good. And if you're someone that can communicate, you're articulate, um, maybe you do have a higher education, I think you can go really far in this field. If you do plan to pick something up like that, but it's a tough business. It's volatile. Um, I one of the guys that works for me, he commutes to the Bay Area from Manteca every day. So he deals with like an hour and a half of traffic here. He goes 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes back home, depending on where the job's at. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's a lot of, and jobs start at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. So it's tough for a lot of people. It's definitely not everyone's cut out for the work. But if you can do it, there's definitely really good money to be made. But the thing is too, like I have hurt myself playing sports before. Fortunately, I can do most of my job from the office. I don't have too many field duties. When one of my guys, let's say, breaks their arm, they don't work, they don't get paid, and they sit at home um, until they're healed again. So a lot of people that have office jobs have the luxury of being able to take PTO or sick leave or things like that. And I think most construction companies that I've seen don't really have a ton of perks or benefits like that for their employees, especially when they're variable hourly. Um, I would say the compensation for, I guess, like benefits outside of your wages. Some companies have traditional medical and dental. I've heard of some companies that don't provide any. I'm not sure what the laws are right now, because I do provide benefits. I think less than 10 people. You don't need to provide a lot of those things, but so it varies. A lot of construction companies are small, almost like mom and pop shops, maybe run by people that don't really know how to run a business too well. And then you have some that are running like Fortune 500 companies, extremely intelligent management, upper management. They're kind of structured like maybe a tech company would be, or a large law firm or something like that. So construction companies are all over the map. The types of managers you'll get are all over the map, and the pay rates are all over the map too. It's kind of like its own, market economy in itself.
Yeah. And so let's talk about shortages too, Logan. I know we've heard a lot from the mainstream press about how we have all these tradespeople retiring and it looks really bad. And I know personally, as somebody who's owned property, that in the Bay Area, if you want a painter, like good luck if you want somebody that week. You got to call them a couple weeks in advance. Is the shortage as real as you've witnessed as you've looked in the industry, and or is it a lot of hype?
Um, Both. Like I think you can go through periods of struggling to find people to do good work for you.
Mm.
Whether that's looking for an individual employee or that's looking for a subcontractor. I think once for me, it's easier for me to find a subcontractor that is one good and two is going to respond to me very quickly. Just because I give them repeat business, right? Maybe you as someone who doesn't have an established relationship with them might be a little bit tougher. Because people will, rearrange their schedule to prioritize me, which is nice. But it's definitely tough to find like an ideal laborer, let's say. Like it's hard to find someone that is the full package. And so I think if you find someone that can think on their feet for themselves and keep the company in mind, not try to not damage things when they're going through the process. You might get someone that's really good in construction, but they leave a mess or they don't do things the prettiest, right? So it is hard to find um, people like that. And then, yeah, I mean, when the market's hot, all the good contractors are busy. They're really, really busy. So, the last few years when a lot of people were buying real estate, a lot more people were remodeling. Um, I think it was really hard for people to find good contractors. The market slowed down a little bit. I think there's been a lot more um, new contractors that have entered the space. And so, I think we're kind of seeing the other end of the cycle right now. It's probably easier to find someone, but the work might be a little more shoddy just because people are new. So, yeah, it's cyclical, just like a lot of other industries are. And one thing I wanted to mention too that I should have. There's a lot of labor unions as well in the construction space. So there's carpenters unions, masons unions, laborers unions, plumbing, electrical, etc. Um, and so these unions, you pay your dues. They provide you similar to what Cheryl was saying. All your benefits, your medical, your dental. They provide you a check 2 times a year for paid time off.
Oh,
They just pay you for that time. You can take it or you don't have to. And then time off's different in construction typically because you're paid by the hour. So if you don't work, you don't get paid. So, um, people are typically more flexible with giving time off because they're not paying you for it. And then you also get a pension as well. And then they help you find work. So if you are like, if let's say I was a union contractor, I'm not, but all my labor has to be through the union. So if I lay some people off because I finish a job or I get a new job and I hire people, I call the union. I say, hey, I need 10 guys at my job tomorrow. And then they'll send 10 people to my job site. So, so they help the contractor and then they also help the worker by providing them with a way to get work.
and that's actually a good point. So, we've heard a lot about unionization in tech. So, for example, Google has a workers' union that comments every single time layoffs occur or
Mm-hmm.
ethics are breached that they think are breached. And so, I think this would be a question for Cheryl and Rick too, if they're both part of their own respective unions within their companies. What are your thoughts on, I would say, with regards to unions and joining one? Is that the way to go in these, and can that be an attractive reason for someone to say switch into one of these careers? And I'll just go back to you, Logan, before going back to Cheryl and Rick.
Sure. Yeah. I think it depends. all unions are different. So let's take the local plumbers union around here. From what I've heard, a lot of those guys get, and I say guys, they're pretty much, that's the term in the industry, but a lot of those people are maybe get 20 hours of work a week. So they don't
Mhm.
get a full-time workload. Their union, predetermined wages are pretty high. But they typically don't have a full slate. So they might leave the union and look elsewhere. But the really good union plumbers are employed full time and they're making, 60 to $80 an hour, plus they have their slate of benefits. Um, and in construction, there's a ton of overtime too. So maybe these people are making $90 an hour. If they're making on the low end $90 an hour in overtime and 120 hours double time, or if they're working on Sunday. So they're making really good money. Plus they have their good benefits packages on top of that. Um, there's also a lot of people you get that kind of just milk the union benefits. So they don't work a ton, but they work enough to keep all their benefits, which I'm not sure, $30,000 in benefits a year. So some people also like that because they'll admit they don't want to work a ton, they don't want to work super hard, but that's just, they're kind of happy with minimal hours and that's the way they want to do it. And so um, you get those kind of people that are happy to be in the union and happy with what the union provides them. And then you get people that want full-time work and they just can't get it. And and some of them are really good and they get laid off from a job, which happens all the time in construction because it's job based. And so they get laid off, they look for work, they can't find it, and then they might leave their union to find work in the private sector. So it varies. It just depends. And if you're in a union that has a ton of demand, then it's great for the employee.
Wow, awesome. Cheryl, do government workers have a union, and what's that like?
Do they? Yes. I'm not in a union anymore, but I have been in a union previously.
Hmm.
Um, Benefits, some are really good. I'm going to cite my brother. My brother works for the city of San Jose as an engineer. And look, he got Lunar New Year off one of his holidays. Can you believe it? And I was so jealous of him because I'm like, what did they do? Give you a light C and like send you home? And so City of San Jose has great
He got
holidays.
a red envelope.
He got a red envelope and he won. His union, they feed him like crab, spaghetti crab stuff. I mean, his union is like top notch. He won a $200 gas gift card from Shell. I was like, are you kidding me? Whereas my union at the city of Santa Clara, I was even lucky to get a hot dog at lunch. But I was only paying dues $5 a paycheck. So, I mean, my union was pretty minuscule. Now at Contra Costa, I'm actually not in a union. I'm unrepresented because I'm in upper management. But I do deal with the unions quite a lot because all of my
Mm.
employees are in unions. And so they love their union because they have terrific benefits and they fight for them. They get cost of living increases, 5%, 4%, 6% every year. I think my brother's got like 6 or 7%. And
Wow.
then my fiance works for the county of Santa Clara and they have like 5, 6%. And he enjoys his union. So it just depends. I'm going to turn it over to Rick.
Yep, Rick, over to you.
So, on the subject of unions, teachers' unions are very interesting because some are phenomenally strong and some are embarrassingly weak. And here in the state of Maryland, our unions are not very strong, and they don't seem to really grasp the concept of like what their responsibilities are. To give you an example, I noticed the first few years that I was in education, the union would come to the bargaining table with the school district over what we call step increases. Everything is based on what step you're in, how many years you've been teaching. And so the school district would say, well, we can give you a step increase, or if the teachers would like, we can give them a one-time bonus on their next paychecks. And that one-time bonus was small. It's like $500. And the teachers would just jump all over, oh, an extra $500. And after doing this for a few years, everybody was saying, well, our county is several steps behind where everybody else is in the state because the teachers were voting on these little bonuses instead of their step increases. I don't know why the union would even bring that to the table, honestly, but it's an example of the fact that all unions are not the same. You can get into a really good union, you can get into a really weak union. Fortunately, the education field has become so scarce as far as the availability of new teachers that are coming out of college and people who are leaving the education field. That the negotiating power of even a weak union is much stronger. And you're seeing like just last year, our school district said we're putting everybody where they should have been if they had all their correct step increases. And there were teachers who got $20,000-$30,000 raises overnight, for their annual salary. Um, the great thing about working in education, if you're not sure like the money, every school district posts what their teachers make online. Like you can literally go on and see if you're looking to apply at a certain school district, what the range of salaries is. And then if you're wise and you go in and you take a look at what their contract is, what the union's contract is with the school district, or what the teacher's contract is. One of the things I did when I first came back into education or came into education was I was working on getting my education degree. They hired me in because I had expertise in an area that they were was a desperate field. So as I was looking, I noticed that the school district has the ability to negotiate up to 5 additional steps to hire somebody in a field of need. And if you're not aware of that, they're not going to just throw that at you. But it's a great thing to do that research, and then when you get to that position where they say, all right, we want to grant you your certification, you say, okay, well, I've been here for 4 years. I need you to put me to step 9 instead of a step 4. And they say, well, why would we do that? And I'm like, because computer science is an area of high need, and because your contract says that you have the ability to pay me up to an additional 5 steps. And I know California, the pay ranges are probably a little higher than they are in Maryland. Teachers can make anywhere from 58,000 a year up to 120,000 a year. But our pensions, our retirement, are based on your 3 highest paid years. So what you see in education a lot of is teachers will teach for X amount of years, and then they will take an administrative position, like an assistant principal's position, where they could make up to 180,000 a year. And they do that for 3 years and then retire, and their retirement is based on those 3 years that they were in as an assistant principal instead of the 20 years that they spent teaching. And so you really just kind of have to weigh, like Cheryl said, I sleep well at night. I love my job. I love what I do. I have fun. It is harder than it used to be. In the 14 years I've been in education, it has changed quite a bit. But I have learned that kids are still kids and they still want to learn. And if you're teaching a subject that is of any value to them whatsoever, they're going to give you the leeway to lead them in the direction where they need to learn. And I was reading an article actually earlier today, kind of preparing for this. The state of California actually ranks near the bottom of national instruction rankings because only 40% of California high schools offer computer science teachers or classes. And it's because they lack the number of teachers. So the state is actually going through a process of one, making it easier for teachers to get hired. They literally have a computer science strategic implementation plan. And then there's just in the last 6 months, there was signed Assembly Bill 1251, which is looking at streamlining the process of becoming a computer science teacher. So when you're talking about leaving the tech field, yes, you are definitely going to take a pay cut to become a teacher, but I go to work at 8:40 in the morning. Um, 2 days a week, I stay an extra hour afterwards to work on my robotics club. Other than that, I'm leaving at 4 o'clock. I'm off on weekends unless I'm going to a robotics tournament, which I get paid extra for. I'm off on summers. Like I have an opportunity to make. Normally, I make an additional probably 20 to 30,000 in the summer times, doing summer camps and writing curriculum and things of that nature. So even with the pay ranges that they give you, there's still opportunities to make more money in those downtimes. Um, and it's so nice. Yeah, we're technically listed as 10-month employees, but they spread our salary out over 12 months. So we do still receive paychecks through the summer. Coming from the IT field and from the business world, I'm used to this is your salary, this is what you're going to make, break that down into your paychecks. Teachers don't always think of it that way when they come out, straight out of college and teaching, and they're like, well, why do I have to cut my pay to be able to get it through the summer? Well, if you're a salaried employee, then you're used to making X amount per year. So realistically, I don't know of any school districts that don't allow teachers to go ahead and receive their annual pay spread out through 12 months, even though you're technically a 10-month employee. But I will tell you that there are a lot of opportunities to work in the summer, to make additional money, kind of double dip even. It's a great time. I love the summer because that's where I get to pay off my credit cards from Christmas the year before. But it's it's not it's you're gonna definitely take a pay cut from tech, but it's so rewarding. If you don't mind me taking just a second, 2 minutes before this happened, I got an email from a former student who told me that he's applying for an internship for the Aspire 2024 high school summer internship program at Johns Hopkins University. And it is a holistic STEM learning experience where APL staff and mentors work with students to complete projects. And he asked me if I would write a letter of recommendation for him. And at the end, he just said, P.S. Mr. Hall, I'm thankful for all you've done for my learning. You've helped shape me into the student I am today. I don't know how many times you guys get that kind of email in any other field. I know I never got one when I was working tech. It's a different story when you're able to literally change the lives of these kids, and I smile and laugh every time I hear Cheryl say, "I sleep at night." Man, do I sleep at night? Way better than I used to when I made a lot more money working in IT. So I just want to throw that out there for everybody.
I think that's something that everyone should really heed, right? How well do you sleep at night? If you're wondering if you're at a public tech company and you're wondering what your life is like on a quarterly basis, that's definitely something to think about for sure. Yeah. So I feel like we spent a lot of time on money, which is really important because we all got bills to pay. I want to thank all of you for that part of the conversation. And we still have a little bit more. I want to hop into some another couple questions here before we wrap. I think the next thing that I want to talk about that is also on everyone's mind, outside of how much they get paid and possibly how they can transition, which I do want to cover at some point, is to talk about artificial intelligence, right? So everybody in tech is afraid these days because they think that ChatGPT or some version of AI is going to take their jobs. And so with AI becoming very pervasive across our entire world, and possibly going into other industries, it stands to ask how AI may affect any of your careers and how you see your career field evolving, and whether it is AI proof or whether there is a threat from artificial intelligence. Tell us a little bit about that and where you think things are headed. Rick, I'll start with you.
The day that they can get AI to monitor the hallways of a middle school, I will be impressed. There's a lot AI can do. Interacting with middle school students is probably not going to be something that we see for a long, long time, not in my lifetime anyway. AI definitely has impacted our jobs in some ways better, in some ways worse. Students will use AI to try to write papers in like language arts class and things like that. So it's usually pretty obvious when you suddenly see them using verbiage that they would never, ever even probably be able to define for you. Um, but I don't. They're teaching education in general just requires so much human interaction and people skills that I can't. I don't foresee. Yeah, I understand the surveillance stuff, um, but it's one thing to monitor, and it's another to be able to respond. So I don't. I mean, obviously, at some point we can all be replaced by AI. However, I think education is going to probably be one of the last fields to genuinely have to deal with that. My opinion.
Good to know. Yeah, um I think teachers, those unions, depending on that strength, we'll see what happens. And right, the power of unions as well, and saying, hey, where does AI come into all of this? And you're not taking our jobs away. Logan, how soon is it going to be that an AI builds my next house?
I think the construction industry, while certainly, a lot of companies use a lot of tech, a lot are decently behind. Um, I don't know when there's going to be a huge AI influence in the industry. I've used it for if I have to like write a report, or I guess like formulate like a common plan, like one I used recently, a stormwater prevention plan. I asked ChatGPT to, put it, write one using these parameters just to kind of get me a good outline, and then I edited it myself. Um, but I don't think there's a ton of work that, really could be done using AI right now. I'm sure there's some, but some cool AI tools that could be released in the near future, but I don't see it really affecting many jobs unless we're talking about, like what you see in a Tesla factory of robots, putting cars together or things like that. But um, I don't think it's going to have a huge influence, at least relative to other industries.
That's really good news. I think that's hopefully music to a lot of folks' ears as they've heard you speak tonight about the opportunities in construction. Cheryl,
Love this question. You know what? In the 2000s, like right before Y2K, they were saying librarians are going to be obsolete because of the internet, right? And look, we're still around, we're still kicking. And by the way, when the economy goes down, library business skyrockets. Why? Because people come to us to get their free information, to get job help, to get all the things, LinkedIn Learning, Safari Tech Books, all of the things that people want but can't pay for. The library has that. So as we're approaching AI, will AI make librarians obsolete? And I have to say, no. We're just like Rick, we're a people-oriented business. That's why people come to us. Look, you could Google something at your house. You don't need me to answer it, but you still come to me because you want the human interaction. You want the interacting with people. And so I think the key is that you have to use and leverage AI to your advantage. For example, my job, right? I have to write back a lot of customers who are very angry at us, right? And so when I do that, I write it, but I know my grammar is not the best, right? It just isn't. And I'm rushing through things. So what I do, I go through AI to just clean it up a little bit, take some ideas, and then massage it so that when I send it out, it's going to sound professional. and it's good. So it's how you leverage those things. And I have had people, I interview a lot of people. I've caught somebody using AI on an interview before. And the thing is that, again, using AI as a tool is great, but leveraging it and using it 100%, it's not going to work. So it's just basically how you leverage the AI. Use it as a tool, but not as the end all be all to get you through day to day.
That's a good answer. Yeah. Grania.
So AI, there's some ways that it can be very effective, and it can help out with a lot of research items. There's a lot of legal companies trying to get into legal AI. But it still has a lot to be desired with what it's offering. It's still very much in its infancy. Plus, one of the things as attorneys, we need to be careful about attorney-client privilege. And with a lot of AI platforms, they're drawing from everything out on the internet, and we have to make sure our clients' information doesn't get out there. Plus, we have the added expectations. When being in law, a lot of times is very adversarial, and you want to win your point, or you want to prove your point. And so people are going to research your case law, and they're going to question it. And there's been a lot of attorneys, like several attorneys, who have gotten called out by the court because the case law that they have, because I learned AI is like a teen or a toddler. It's making shit up as it's going on and doing things, and it'll create case names, and it will try to come up with these fake fact patterns. And when the judge is looking at you and saying, okay, tell us where this case is from because your opposing counsel has called you out on it, it's problematic. People have gotten they've been reported to the bar for using AI. So I think there's job security, because I don't think AI is going to come up with all the ways that you can sue someone. But there's always another attorney that if there's a way to sue someone, they're willing to kind of step up and do it. Now, I also do, as you know, Albert, I do stand-up comedy on the side, and I have tried to use AI to help me jumpstart like a routine or something. Because like what Cheryl was saying, sometimes there's just a different way to phrase things that my brain is just not in the right headspace for it. But I've gotten AI like where it's lectured me more, like, you really shouldn't be making jokes about this topic. It's way too sensitive. I mean, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get my morality lessons from AI, but because I know my audience or where I'm going, there are times when you can, like, it's okay. Because one of the things I was asking, like, okay, how do you come up with a different punchline? Like, what do you call 500 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? And the response that came up with, like, no, lawyers are people too, and you can't you can't make them feel bad. And so there's that. It still has a long way to go, and it's easily confused. Plus, I've heard kind of AI is sort of like going through a quiet quitting thing, where it's like telling people, go look it up yourself. Like, again, becoming kind of a moody teenager, where it's like your sole role is to help me, and telling me to go do it myself is really not supporting you. So I think, like Cheryl had said, I agree with her that it can be a very, very effective tool, but we still have to, I think the humans have to we got to keep it in check with what it is that we're doing. And I mean, unfortunately, you hear like when people rely on it too much, like the Tesla self-driving cars, where people are getting into accidents and dying because they're giving up their human responsibility for something. And, we can't let go of that. So.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think AI hallucinations has been one of the more fascinating things to watch over the last year and a half or so. Just knowing that when AI gets its own mind, that will be a day that I think will be something of reckoning. My final question before we go to final thoughts and whether you're hiring, just because we like to ask that question, is knowing what you know about tech, what would you consider to be the transferable skills that our friends who are in here today, that include everyone from software engineers to accounting finance people to admin assistants, product managers, marketers, and so forth, can apply into the field that you currently work in? Grania.
That's a great question. I think some of the transferable skills that you have would include a lot of soft skills that people or companies don't really, they're missing out on a lot more. Can you talk to other people? Can you talk to coworkers? I know there's a lot of people who are even afraid to kind of pick up the phone and call because it's no longer the cool tech thing. Everybody's into, like, I don't even know what what's the latest and greatest thing after TikTok or sending text messages. Like, some of us are losing that way to communicate with one another. But I think as humans, it is something that we want to do, and you want to show that you can work effectively with others, and you're not remote and isolated in terms of just letting the tech do whatever for you. I never really worked in tech long time. I was a sort of a temp worker when I was waiting for my bar results in tech, so I don't have a lot of that experience, but I know a lot of people who are in tech, and I know a lot of my clients, what they come up with, it's that remembering that you're human. I think setting in like strong boundaries. This is not really your question, because I know a lot of tech companies kind of take advantage of this, but it is important. What I will say, what I know about employers, is they really don't care about you, the individual. Like, you're replaceable. Like, even the submersible, the Titan that exploded or imploded when it got up, they had job posting for looking for a new captain. Like, their captain had just died and they're trying to replace him. A company will look out for itself. You need to look out for yourself, and
Yeah.
remember, you matter, you're important, your boundaries are there, and you really should be having a work-life balance with it. I understand there's some people who are more money motivated, but there is, what does that money cost you? So I don't know if I kind of rambled throughout answering that question, but
I think
I'm
your
doing an
final piece
AI.
about being looking out for yourself is the most important sentence you said in your answer. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Good.
yeah, very much so. Cheryl.
Okay, so again, we're high customer service, right? So anything in customer service, retail, that type of thing will be perfect for our industry. In fact, one of my bosses would just hire people who worked in retail, like at Old Navy. You pull people from the mall and have them work our public desk, because they know how to cater to difficult folks and people from all walks of life. Now getting back to sales, I hired a sales guy. He is absolutely fabulous. I mean, really and truly, sales folks are great in librarianship. Additionally, if you have a finance background, IT, I just, on Albert's list, I just posted a couple of weeks ago an IT job, and that's in our industry as well. We also had a budget and finance job that was there, although paid very low at 50 grand a year, because I got a lot of comments about that. Oh, it's only 50 grand a year. I can make that money. I can make, six figures at tech. So it just depends, but leveraging those skills. And again, government hires people that they know. So if you're unknown in government, you need to start being active, and meaning like volunteering and getting your word of mouth out there, getting out there. Don't be shy. If you are out of a job, I think the number one fallacy is people don't say anything because they're embarrassed. But you need to use that as word of mouth advertising. You need to put it out there that you're looking for your next opportunity, and you would welcome any and all opportunities. Because I know a lot of folks who come to me and they're like, I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anybody because I'm embarrassed. But that's the time you really need to ramp up and be your own marketing, your best marketing and salesperson, is by doing that. So a lot of different industries come to us, especially like I was mentioning in the comments, Rick is a teacher. We get a lot of teachers that come into the library world. I hate to say it because they can't chop it up in the classroom. And so they come to us after, they get tired, the grind is tough. I mean, I don't know how Rick does it, it's a grind. And so they come to us when they're like, man, I'm just burnt out, or they didn't get tenure, and they come to us for a job. And we love teachers. So it fits right into our kind of our wheelhouse.
Nice. Logan.
Yeah, I have pretty similar answers. Of course, you get the overlapping job responsibilities, right? Whether you work in finance and tech or finance and construction, right? It's pretty similar. So, there's definitely opportunities as long as it's not like a tech specific role. Um, and then, yeah, I think the soft skills are also something that uh, gives you a leg up if you're coming from tech. There's not a lot of polished communicators. A lot of people in the industry, it's an old school industry. It's kind of run by a lot of, old school people that might be very abrasive. They might cuss at you, right? So it's construction is just a little bit different. Um, Getting someone that can nicely word an email or be very articulate, or really be able to communicate with customers effectively, via writing or over the phone. Um, it's really impressive in the field. It's you definitely could stand out. And so people that are coming from tech can use Microsoft Office very well, um, can communicate with customers and do those things. I think all those are really important skills, and maybe something that if you have, if you do apply to a construction job in the future, perhaps something that the hiring manager might not think of that you might want to point out to them, because that's it's something that I look for when I'm hiring, is someone that can do those things, right? It sounds basic to anyone who's coming from tech, but it's a pretty important thing for someone in construction.
Awesome. Rick.
So I love this question because it's something I actually discuss with my students. The fact that I tell them I came from IT sales, and so whereas most teachers are not comfortable having conversations with adults, they talk to kids all day, but when they have to deal with a parent, then they kind of just melt. I said, beginning of every semester, I have this conversation with my students. I said, I love calling your parents because I was in sales and I used to make a living off of these phone calls. So every call to your parents is a sales call for me. So I start out with thanking them for taking my call, apologizing for, taking their very valuable time, establishing the yes. You got to get your sales calls. You're getting the other people to say yes and agree with you. So I say, your goal and my goal is the same for your child to be successful in my class, right? And they say yes. And I'm sure that you expect your child to behave in school so that they're in the best possible position to learn, right? Yes. I said, I said it's like Zig Ziglar making a phone call. I said, I'm gonna have your parents eating out of the palm of my hand before I even get to the point where I have to address your behavior. And I said, in 14 years, I have yet to have a single parent say anything other than, my apologies, I will deal with this. It won't happen again in your class. So those sales skills come in super handy, but they also come in handy with the students. So when I'm talking to my students, and I don't ever deal with, why do I have to learn this? Because I've already given you the why. I've already gotten your buy-in, because I use those sales skills to get them to buy into the lesson or the unit before we ever get started. My seventh graders are doing HTML right now. And I'm explaining to my students that at one point I was selling advertising, and this is back when the internet was relatively new and small companies didn't have their own websites. And I taught myself how to do HTML so that when I went to these companies and said, hey, let's get your advertisement out to your potential customers, what's your website? And they say, I don't have one. All right, well, let's talk about that. And I explained to them, look, these skills, they open doors for you. And when you get the students to buy into the importance of what you're teaching, it makes it much easier to complete, to not deal with the behavior issues, and to have them focus, and to have them genuinely wanting to learn. And so I say anybody who's worked in sales, um, you've got a big advantage coming into education. If you've worked in IT, there's such a desperate push. We have 3 STEM schools in our school district, and I'm in one of them. I have been teaching computer science since they started the STEM program 11 years ago. The other 2 schools have had a different computer science teacher every single year that they've had the STEM program, because tech pays more than education. However, you got those negatives that go with the positives, like job security. There's so much. I have so much job security right now. I have opportunities to go to different schools, different school districts. They're creating at our Center for Applied Technology, which is our like career center. They're creating a robotics class, and they contacted me and said, we want you to interview for this position. And I went and interviewed for it, and they said the position posts in April. It's yours if you want it. Like, they will literally fight over you when you have the ability to teach something like computer science. So the job security is amazing. Um, so there are a lot of things that cross over in both sales and in technology that will allow you to kind of pick and choose where you want to go in education.
Love it. Job security and sleeping well at night. I think that's really attractive to a lot of people. And I think that as a lot of folks weigh their career options tonight, it'll be something on their mind and hopefully something they value. So we're about to conclude here. I want to thank everyone for staying the 90 plus minutes that we've been on here so far, especially my panelists who've come here to answer these fabulous questions today and also engage in the webinar chat. So wanted to just conclude and it'll be 2 parts. One will be your final thoughts on your field, anything that you wanted to offer in terms of wisdom or insight into our audience, and also if it's relevant to you, whether you're hiring. And then we'll close. Rick.
I would be stunned if anybody watching this doesn't live in a school district that's hiring. That would be utterly amazing to me. I think that sometimes education gets a bad rap because it's not easy. It's a different world than it was 15, 20 years ago, and so it requires you to have a little better people skills. It requires you to have better communication skills with parents. But when it comes down to it, this is not a difficult job if you just make the effort to build the relationships. It's all about relationships, and whether we're talking about students, we're talking about parents, we're talking about your the people you work under. I have autonomy. I do what I want when I want in my classroom, because I have established that relationship with the people that I work for, and it's really what you make out of it. But I literally tell people I have the best job in the world, because I get to teach the best and the brightest of the next generation. And when you hear people say things like, oh, I'm worried about what's going to happen when I'm older. Look, my kids are going to be taking care of all of us because I know what they can do. And if you have that kind of focus, instead of like, oh, I have to do this. We've all worked jobs where you're working crazy hours. Cheryl talked about it earlier. Putting in those crazy hours. You're not putting in those crazy hours in education. You're just not. It's just a different world, and it's not. If you've worked any field that is challenging, especially when it comes to hours, education will seem like a cakewalk for you.
Love it. Logan.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah. So final thoughts on your career field and if it's relevant to you, if you're hiring and what you're hiring for.
Sure. So Yeah, construction is, I would say, for me, I found it somewhere where I could potentially differentiate myself, right? I mean, I think that's the goal for a lot of people, is to differentiate yourself. I didn't really have any trade experience when I entered the field, but just coming from, coming from tech, having an education, was able to, at least already kind of put me ahead, among some of my peers. So, when you're working in tech, everyone's coming from top universities. And so, if you are out there looking for a new job, you in construction or probably other industries, right? I mean, you might be able to help differentiate yourself a little bit, if you can bring something to the table that most of the people in the industry don't have. And I am currently hiring. I'm adding two roles at my company. One of them, I'm probably making a decision tomorrow, so I'm not really open. I don't have that one open anymore. And then I do have another role. It's kind of a hybrid sales slash field role. So you'll be doing, it's fully remote. It would be for selling some of our services on the industrial side that we with our industrial clients. And then we would help train you to perform some of the work that you would be selling in the field as well.
Awesome. Cheryl.
We are hiring, and every time we hire, guess where I go? I go to Albert's list to post it. So if you're not on Albert's list, you're not watching the feeds. I've posted, like, I don't know, Albert, I've posted tons of jobs
You
in the
have.
library world. And yeah, and so this is one of them. I'm going to post it in the chat. It does not require a library degree or a master's degree in library and information science, and it's around $65,000 to $80,000. And some parting words. I want to let you know, I've been through the gamut of interviewing recently, and I feel your pain. I really do. It's tough. If you want to be on that merry-go-round cycle of interviewing constantly and getting rejected and stuff like that, it's tough. But what I will say is the last two jobs that I've gotten, including this one at Contra Costa, I was rejected the first time I interviewed for this one. But the director emailed me and saw something in me and said I needed to apply for this other job. And lo and behold, I'm here. Same thing with my new job at Santa Clara County. I got turned down 4 years ago for a job with them, but I interviewed again. They remembered me from my interviews because I was a finalist for that round, and they hired me 4 years later. So you never know when these rejections could turn into gold. You never, ever know. So you got to keep that network open. And also, please don't be a fool. Like, if you've got a job offer and yeah, it's lower than what you want, sometimes taking it is better than not taking it. You can always look for another job that makes more money, or like I mentioned, like my favorite thing to do is play the stock market and do all that stuff and buy like Palo Alto Networks today while it's down 28%. That's what I like to do. So you can do stuff like that as well. I think some people think of their job as their only means to an income. And I think that the fallacy is that having one source of income is going to make it in this world. And I always like to leverage multiple sources of income. So, maybe being an entrepreneur like Logan and going into construction, having your own business is a great way of doing that. Having an LLC, doing some other things, YouTube, Google, all those things.
Yeah. Grania.
So the one thing I'll say is a lot of people, I know they misunderstand the law with things. And it seems a lot of times employers seem to have a lot more power than employees, but as employees, you have rights as well. So if something doesn't make sense to you, seek consultation with an attorney or post on Albert's list about it. I mean, Albert will generally tag me in the like legal kind of questions, and sometimes the answer is there's nothing wrong here, there's nothing to see. It sucks, but it is what it is. But and other times it's like, nope, that's age discrimination, or no, you still like every employer in California, every employee, regardless of the size of the company, is entitled to 5 paid sick days a year. Now that's California law. So if you have employees, like if you're working somewhere and you're not given your paid sick leave, or you're not given that time, you have a claim against your employer for doing that. There's other things that are going on. So know that what your employer says is not the end all be all, but also take an opportunity, get to know what your rights are. And if you have a question about it, post it. We'll see what we can do to get you informed. And I'm
Love it.
not hiring, but you know what? I will say, if anyone here wants to try to take on doing some kind of legal research or wants to pitch a position with me, I could certainly use some help. But as a solo, I don't have a defined position, but I am open to someone who wants to be entrepreneurial and say, hey, I want to see if I can make this work or something. Definitely reach out to me.
Did you just create a job on a Zoom webinar?
Possibly, but again, I don't have a legal relationship with anyone in this audience.
I love it. So, I mean, you have 56 people watching here and 4 people on Facebook. So you might have 60 applicants tomorrow, which, I mean, hey, I love creating problems like that.
There you go.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists, Grania, Cheryl, Logan, and Rick. I am so appreciative of your time, as is my audience, for you joining us today and talking about jobs outside of tech and whether the grass is greener on that other side. And I think everybody has learned a lot, from the benefits of being able to sleep better to that pension after retirement. For everybody here, this webinar is recorded. You will be able to watch it again on our YouTube channel when we have it live. We'll be following up on Eventbrite. Thank you all so much. Just saying that one more time. And we have plenty more webinars coming up, so we'll hope to see you there. Have a great rest of your Wednesday and a great rest of your week. We appreciate your time. Bye, everybody. And there we go. I'm going to go ahead and